Well, hello again, and here we are doing yet another video for you. Probably going to bore you to tears, but nevertheless, I wanted to give you my thoughts on the Panasonic Lumix GH1 in 2023. Is it still a viable, usable camera when it was launched 14 years ago back in 2009? In my opinion, the answer is yes. There are a few caveats to that, but I'll come on to it. Overall, I like it very much. As I think I indicated in one of my previous videos, Panasonic cameras were never on the horizon for me. It wasn't until I started looking for an infrared converted camera that I dropped on a Panasonic GF1, which has been fantastic, and I was really impressed with the build quality. Tiny little cameras, to the extent that I bought a non-infrared converted GF1 as well, a black one. But that's a different story. So the GH1 in 2023, is it still a usable, viable camera? Most definitely. You can pick them up for peanuts, really, in camera terms these days. And they're smashing compact cameras. I can't find a great deal to complain about. A couple of points, and we'll come on to them in a moment, is the performance of both the sensor and probably the firmware and processor, which are starting, I think, to show their age. But I've got a couple of examples which I'll talk you through in a couple of minutes. The basics: it is a 12 megapixel, 12 effective megapixel mirrorless camera in the form of a DSLR. It has a fold-out flippy screen, which is fully articulating, which is great if you want to do selfies. That's not something that is going to interest me in the slightest, but it is there for people who want to do selfies and who like to vlog using a camera like this. The GH1 was also the very first Micro Four Thirds camera to offer video recording, and it is full HD 1080p video recording. Now, I'm not a videographer. For my YouTube videos, everything gets done on the GoPro Hero 9 Black, which is what you're seeing me through now. So this is not going to get much use, if any, for video. I'm saying not much because from what I can gather, if you hack it, you can up the bit rate so that it will give you much better video performance than when it first came out. But from what I've been able to discover on the internet right now, as of end of January, all the hacks that I can find just don't work anymore. So if anybody viewing this has got a hack that is still up on the internet and available, please let me know, because I'd like to perhaps just give it a try for curiosity. Having said that, I'm going to be using it as a stills camera. Now, the flippy out fully articulating screen has a major benefit to me, in as much as a lot of my photographs are done from low level, and quite often they're also done in the vertical or portrait format. And having this screen, which is fold out in this manner, means I can put the camera down really low and still get a perfectly good view of the subject matter on the LCD screen on the back without having to perform all sorts of acrobatics. So that's where the flip out fully articulating screen becomes extremely handy for people like me. It's also good, of course, because when it's folded in, you've got no risk to the actual LCD getting scratched. Somewhere else that it shows its age is the fact that it does not have, just let me turn it on, it does not have the automatic viewfinder detection system built in. So if you want to swap from the LCD on the back to the viewfinder, you have to press the button on here, which turns this off and the viewfinder on. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, it's no big deal to me, but you know, it might be to some people, I don't know. In terms of controls, it's very standard sort of layout. You have an on-off switch here on the top plate, which illuminates when the camera is turned on. You have your PASM dial, which we've all come to either love or hate depending on your viewpoint, and it has the usual scene modes for sort of portraits, landscapes, close-ups, all the rest of it, with a couple of scene sections built in, which to be honest with you, I would never use. They are described as being, just let me get them up, sunset, party, baby 1 and 2, and pets. It's a very basic looking menu on this. I'll probably put a still so you get an idea of what it looks like. Don't be expecting any super detailed menus on cameras of this age. So we'll take it off the scene and put it back to aperture priority, which is what I tend to use. The control wheel for changing either shutter speed or aperture is on the front here, and depending on how you've got the control dial on the top of the camera set, you either push it in to change from aperture to shutter speed or vice versa. So that's quite straightforward. You have another control underneath the PASM dial, which changes the camera from shooting single frame through multiple frames, exposure compensation and self-timer. So that's quite handy to have. I nearly always have it set to single frame shooting, simply because of the way that I actually take my images. You have a changeable film modes button on the back. Again, it's not really going to be of great interest to me. The film modes you've got are standard, dynamic, nature, smooth, that's me, nostalgic, and vibrant. So, you know, and you can change things like the contrast and vibrance independently anyway. But really, that's not going to be something that I'm going to be remotely interested in, I don't think. You also have a quick menu, which gives you access to the most important items you've got to select, like your ISO rating, etc. ISO settings on this range from 100 up to 3200. I have not used it at high ISO ratings. I strongly suspect that in 2023, if you used this much above 1600, you would be disappointed, I suspect, with the amount of noise that gets generated. I might be wrong. If any of you successfully use a GH1 at 3200, let me know. And of course you can set it on automatic as well. The shutter button on top, chrome finish to it. It's not threaded for a separate release. Again, it's of no interest to me whatsoever. And the whole camera is covered in a kind of a semi-matte rubberized coating. Now, it doesn't feel anything like you get on, for example, Nikon DSLRs, where it gets sticky after a number of years. Maybe it will, and I've just been lucky with this one, I don't know. But it does have a really good feel to it. And I suspect it's going to be quite hard wearing, to be honest with you. On top of the camera, you do have the conventional hot shoe. You have stereo microphones because it will record stereo sound, obviously, and it does have a built-in flash with a little switch on the side of what used to look like a pentaprism. Quite useful to have. On the back of the camera you have the usual sort of 5-button pad with your menu control in the middle, ISO up on the top, white balance, a function button, playback, autofocus and or auto exposure lock button, and a bin delete button as well on the back. On the base of the camera we have your conventional 1/4-inch thread tripod bush, slap bang under the lens mount, which is great, best place for it, and your battery compartment. It takes the BLB 13E battery, which is the same that belongs in the GF1, so that's, from my point of view, great, because I've now got 3 original Panasonic batteries of the same type, so they're all interchangeable for me. I need to come back to that in a second as well. And the memory card slot is on the side of the camera. It takes conventional SD cards, but it's nice to have it on the side rather than combined with the battery compartment. What else have we got? On the other end of the camera you have a microphone jack, which I think people get very annoyed with. It's not going to bother me too much because it's 2.5mm as opposed to the more industry standard 3.5mm, but you can get adapters, so if I do play around with it on the video side, I'll have to invest in an adapter. And then we have HDMI and USB connections in a separate compartment on the side. So all in all, a very impressive little camera, given that it came out way back in 2009. Oh, the only other control that I have not mentioned to you, telling a lie, 2 controls I've not mentioned to you. On the top left hand end of the camera you have a 3-position switch for your focusing, so you can have it set to manual or continuous autofocus or single shot autofocus. And then the final thing, which I haven't told you about, it does have a diopter correction wheel here on the side of the viewfinder. Viewfinder itself is very nice and bright. You can alter the brightness of both the viewfinder and the LCD screen in the menu. And yeah, all in all, great little camera. You know, first impressions count for a lot. Would I call it an attractive looking camera? No, to be honest with you, but that's just a personal observation, and really what it looks like doesn't bother me. If it works, it's a good camera. When I got the camera and connected it to the Panasonic website, it told me that it was on firmware version 0, which I'd never experienced before. So I've updated it to version 1.4 or 1.5, I think it is, I'm not quite sure now. It claims to have improved autofocusing performance, and I think the burst rate has gone up slightly. If there's a downside, it is the fact that you are no longer able to use third-party batteries. Panasonic have been quite clever in doing that. If I want to use this camera now, it has to be complete with Panasonic genuine OEM batteries, not third-party ones. So having said all that, I want to take you through what I think about the performance of the sensor when you don't get the exposure quite right. So let's have a look at the computer. So what I thought I would show you is what, in my opinion, demonstrates the progress that's been made in both sensor technology and probably the onboard processors in more or less any camera these days. Bearing in mind that the GH1 dates back to 2009, I think in these examples it will demonstrate to you its shortcomings compared to more modern offerings. Now this is an image taken in Princess Park, and I've deliberately underexposed it. We're looking at it in Affinity Photo version 2, and if I drag the exposure slider up by about 2 stops, you can see that whereas we have now got detail in the shadows, we're losing definition and detail in the highlights. They're blowing out. So somewhere in between, let's bring it back to round about a stop, because I want the highlights to be exhibiting quite a bit of colour and detail. So somewhere around about there, 1.2 stops. But we would probably also want to bring out some more detail in the shadow areas in these trees on the left hand side. Now in Affinity Photo, certainly with my Olympus EM1, the shadow and highlight controls work extremely well. Now if we bring up the shadows in the GH1 example to a point where you've got really quite a lot of detail in those tree trunks, the green becomes almost radioactive. It's very bright and very exaggerated, and this I think is one of the shortcomings. If we leave that image as is and just pull up this next one, which in actual fact was exposed I thought more or less correctly, you can see if I swap between the two, the huge difference in the green. And you can see that down here on this earthen area where the grass has been worn away, that we've got quite a lot of magenta colour in here, but nevertheless compared to the grey of the tarmac in the pathway, it's quite natural looking. Swap back to the image that we have modified, and suddenly we have got green coming through in both the tarmac area and in the bare earth area down here as well. And I'll just swap quickly backwards and forwards between those two so that you can see the difference. Now granted, in the other image that I have modified, there is slightly more detail in the tree trunks here, but not a great deal. So we'll just try and bring the shadows up in this one. They're already up 32%. We could bring it up even more. And just let's look at the comparison. Pretty radioactive greens, much more natural looking. And I think this is specific to the age of both the sensor and probably the processor on board. Whether the firmware and software has been updated since is difficult to be precise about, but I think this area, with a digital camera dating back, what, 14 years now, this is where it will fall down if it's going to fall short anywhere. If you get your exposure metering correct, then I don't think it's an issue, but if you do get the exposure wrong, you are going to run into issues like this. So little GH1, given the limitation of the sensor and processor, is it worth buying in 2023? Now in my opinion the answer is yes, if you get the exposure right, and really in 90% of cases the camera's going to do a good job in getting the exposure right for you. You can pick these up for between 30 and 50 pounds on the second-hand market, in good condition, body only. So with the lens of your choice, you can get one for between 100 and 150 pounds, which has got to be good value for money in my book. It's compact, it's well made, and it delivers the goods. So in my book, winner winner chicken dinner. See you all very soon. I hope you continue to enjoy your photography, and a big thank you, by the way, I nearly forgot, a massive thank you. We've just broken through the 500 subscriber barrier, which is not anything really to shout about when other channels have got way over 1 million subscribers. But I don't do it for that reason, as I'm sure you all appreciate. And also, don't forget the question and answer session that I want to do probably sometime in March. I've had a couple of cracking questions already, but if anybody's got anything they would like to ask me about, don't restrict it to photography, anything you like, and I'll do my best to give you an honest answer. Digging a hole for myself there, I suspect. Anyway, for now, enough waffling. Enjoy your photography, and I'll see you all really soon. Bye bye for now.